Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. The explanation for my intro background right now is because it is getting so dark and I needed to get as close to the window as possible. I do not have a ring light. So anyway, welcome to today's video. Basically, this is my full coverage foundation routine plus my contour, highlight, and blush. Just a disclaimer, this is a full coverage, flawless foundation routine. You do not need to do this every day, whether your skin is acne prone, textured, totally free of quote unquote imperfections. Like whatever you want to do that makes you comfortable is totally fine. The techniques I'm going to show you are good for every skin type, especially textured skin and skin that has a lot of visible pores, acne scars, dry patches, stuff like that. There was a time in my life where I was picking my skin so much, you know, I was getting so many breakouts and popping pimples, picking at dry patches was really making it worse because I was infecting my skin by doing that, and it was something that like adults in my life would comment on all the time and make me feel kind of insecure about. So learning to do my foundation and make my skin really flawless is just a way of like navigating the world safely for me so I don't have to deal with people's comments. So if you're watching this because you have a lot that you want to cover up, that is totally okay, and don't let anybody tell you that it means that you don't love yourself. Everybody has something that they're insecure about when it comes to their body. You are beautiful with and without makeup, and however you feel most comfortable is like totally great. But yeah, anyway, without further ado, if you want to learn how to get this flawless full coverage foundation plus blush, contour, and highlight, then please keep on watching. All right, so my lips, top, eyelid makeup, and eyebrows are on. I do not have concealer, primer, none of that on. I have already moisturized. You should only be exfoliating a couple of times a week, but if this is a special occasion, then plan to exfoliate the morning of or the night before, just so you have like a really smooth base to start off with, and then of course make sure you moisturize with something. I normally don't use a primer, but I'm going like the full 9 yards today, so I'm gonna start off with my Nivea Men's Aftershave Balm in Sensitive. For those of you who live under some sort of YouTube rock, Nikki Tutorials made this famous as a primer, and I really like it. I really like the way it feels on the skin, and it does grab onto the foundation really nicely and make it last pretty nicely. I don't think it's like that special in terms of its priming capabilities. The reason I'm using it is because the ingredients do not scare me. So I actually have never really found a concealer that I love, so mainly what I do for full coverage is use a full coverage foundation and color correctors. So the first thing I'm going to use is the Urban Decay Naked Skin Color Correcting Fluid in Peach. If your skin tone is really fair slash if you're more green than purple underneath your eyes, you should use the pink one, and you should use a deeper shade, like Becca's Papaya if you have a deep skin tone. And then I pat it in with the Sephora Pro Airbrush Concealer Brush. The reason I mainly pat is because that keeps the coverage where you put it, whereas buffing will shear out the coverage and just like spread the product around, which is not what I want. Okay, now I'm gonna mix two of my favorite foundations, mainly because the Milani one is too dark for me. I would say Nars Sheer Glow, which is my other favorite foundation, is more of a medium to buildable coverage, and this is a very moisturizing foundation. This foundation actually is very hydrating as well, but it has way better lasting power than Nars Sheer Glow, so I'm mixing those for that reason. So I'm gonna take 1 pump of Sheer Glow and half a pump of Milani, because the pump that comes out appears bigger. By the way, in my review on this, I said it didn't have a pump. That's because I was twisting the cap, but you just gotta pull it off. And I'm going to mix those together on my hand a little bit, and I'm just going to dot that onto my skin. And now I'm going to take my Real Techniques buffing brush, and I am going to do a sort of downwards pat. So I want to spread it a little bit, but I mainly want to pat to keep the coverage in place. This technique is also, like this patting technique is really great if you have textured skin, like if you have any raised areas or dry patches from acne scarring, that kind of thing. Padding is going to be really good for number one, building coverage, and number two, preventing hyperexfoliation, which is what happens when you buff over a textured area too much. It'll just cause skin to raise even more and become inflamed. And yeah, padding is just great. Picking a little bit more off the back of my hand with my brush, I'm going to build that up on my cheeks, which are my problem areas. My skin isn't doing too bad right now, so I kind of could have gotten away with more of a buffing motion, but I'm showing you guys what I do when I need / want maximum coverage. And your foundation should be the color of your neck, by the way, but just in case it like oxidizes throughout the day, and because I want to avoid any harsh lines, I am making sure to cover the jawline and bring it down onto the neck ever so slightly. Now in this area, I have a ton of pores. So I do a combination of like buffing and stippling because that's gonna help to fill in the pores and blur them out. My skin is kind of like normal combination-y, by the way. If you are super oily, this will be super long wearing on you, but you would still have to set it with a mattifying powder. If you're super oily, I would not recommend Nars Sheer Glow. But I find that with my skin, makeup is gonna look the most skin-like and like beautiful if I use hydrating foundations and then set them with powders. So what I'm gonna do next is take another color correcting concealer, and this is the NYX HD Concealer in the shade Lavender. I've definitely used this in a tutorial before, but basically I'm gonna highlight with this, and if your skin tone is light with yellow undertones, you can use a lavender concealer to highlight instead of, and this concealer isn't too full coverage, so I don't like putting full coverage concealer on top of my already full coverage foundation, so I'm gonna highlight with this just because I like the texture and the color works for my skin tone. So this, I'm just gonna put a little bit in a triangle shape underneath my eyes, and I'm gonna put this a really skinny line down the center of my nose, center of the forehead, Cupid's bow, and the center of the chin. The larger you make your highlights, the larger that area is gonna look. So I like to kind of enlarge the space underneath my eyes, so I make that a little bit bigger. My forehead, I kind of just like the size of it, so I make it like a medium size. My chin and down the center of my nose, I try to keep as small as possible. And now I'm going to blend that out with my e.l.f. small stippling brush. And I am going to just stipple over this. Well, I didn't mention this, but the reason I use lavender is because purple is the opposite of yellow. So if you find that you're super fair and yellow and it's hard to get a concealer to brighten up on your skin, using something that's the opposite can help to kind of cancel out any like extra gold tones, and if it's light enough, it'll end up highlighting, if that makes sense. Of course it makes sense, my internalized misogyny. Okay, I'm just using my finger to pat down the center of my nose because I want that to be precise. Same thing with my Cupid's bow, same thing with the center of the chin. And I'm gonna blend it out a little bit with the brush too. Okay, and it looks like I made the center of the chin a little bit too big. Anyway, whatever, it's fine. And now if you have a contour kit, you can use the lighter shade from the contour kit to set your highlight. But what I'm gonna do is take a light face powder. This is the Nars Soft Velvet Loose Powder in Snow. This is a loose setting powder, and it's not translucent, it's got color to it, so it helps keep my highlight areas bright, which again, because I'm so pale, is difficult to do. So I'm going to, I put some onto the lid, and I'm taking that with my Real Techniques setting brush. So I am just patting back and forth and just pressing that powder into the skin. What this is going to do is lock the highlighting concealer in place. If you're dry, you don't have to do this everywhere, but I definitely recommend that almost everyone set the concealer underneath their eyes because that's where most of us can get creasing. So I'm just doing the same thing that I did under my eyes everywhere else where I highlighted. I'm just pressing, especially around the nose, because that's where I tend to get oily and makeup tends to melt off. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to whisk away or buff away any excess powder. But make sure the whole area is set with a patting motion before you do this, because then you're just gonna move your foundation, and that's gonna cause cakiness and texture on the skin. Now, you don't have to set your whole face if you're dry or if you like a luminous finish. I prefer a matte finish, and again, I'm normal to combination. So I'm going to set the rest of my face using the Body Shop Extra Virgin Minerals Loose Powder. And this is also a colored powder, and it's in my skin tone. You can use a translucent powder if you just want to use one powder all over your face, that's fine. And I'm gonna get a small amount in the lid, tap the lid so it's evenly distributed, and then I'm going to take this on a powder puff and literally beat my face with this. Okay, no, the real thing that you should do is press and roll. I just like get excited. And pressing and rolling is really gonna ensure that you don't move your foundation and also that you're really locking it into place. And then take a really soft, fluffy powder brush. I am going to use the Spectrum A01. It is so soft. If it's scratchy, it's gonna pick up your foundation. And I'm just going to whisk or buff away that excess powder. Okay, now I'm gonna contour using the Too Faced Milk Chocolate Soleil bronzer. This is the lightest shade that they have, and I'm gonna take this on my Nars Ita brush. If you have a more angular face, this will be great. If your cheeks are super round, then you might find this a little bit hard to work with. And I would use more of an angled brush or a really small kind of round brush. I'm going to start at the top of my ear, and I like to kind of feel where my cheekbone is and maybe make like a little bit of a fishy face, but where you want to stop the line is where the outer corner of your eye is. So basically stopping here, going in this direction from back to front, we are going to contour. And the reason I'm going from back to front is because wherever your face is the darkest is where it's gonna recede more, and we want the most shadow for that reason to be towards the back of the ear, because that's just how your face is shaped. So I'm bringing it down, and then I'm also buffing it up the cheek. Because if you buff it downward, you want to buff it down the cheekbone, but you don't want to buff it down the actual face, because that will make your face look sunken, and the purpose of this really is to give your face a lift. Now I'm going to do my forehead. I use the same brush, and I start right on the temple, kind of above the arch of the brow, and I just get the whole hairline and then kind of connect it down into my cheek contour. Sometimes I don't even contour this side of my head because of the way my hair is shaped. And then I don't always contour the jaw, but I'll do it a little bit. I don't like how square my jaw is sometimes, so I'm kind of rounding out the shape over here. Just think of it as giving your face its ideal outline. And then when all is said and done, it should be like a 3. And I'm gonna use the same brush for contouring my nose. When I'm getting really intense about contouring my nose, or I'm working on a client, I usually just use an eyeshadow brush. But for me, this works just fine. So I basically just do a straight line down and kind of bring it into the bridge of my eye, and then I take whatever's left on the brush and I put it straight across here, because that's gonna make my nose more like buttony. And now it's time for my favorite blush. A lot of people like to warm up their cheeks by adding a more orangey bronzer on top of the contour and then adding their blush. I like to add a more neutral blush and then add a kind of pop of color blush on the apples of the cheeks. So I'm gonna start off with the Too Faced Love Flush Blush in Baby Love, and I'm gonna take it on a Sephora Pro Featherweight Blending. You can use this for highlighting, contouring, and blush, honestly. And I'm just going to dust that kind of in the opposite direction that I did the bronzer. I'm putting a little more on the apples of the cheeks than I did the contour, and then I'm just sweeping it back into the contour to blend it in, and taking whatever excess and dusting it all over the temples. And this should sit kind of right above your contour. In general, your blush, unless you want to make your cheeks super round, I wouldn't bring it more than 2 fingers closer to your nose. So that's about where I like to keep it. If you want to keep your face more angular and sculpted, then don't put anything on the apples of the cheeks, just keep it back here. I like to bring something onto the apples of my cheeks because my face is very square, and this kind of helps to round it out a little bit. And then finally, for my like pop of color on the apples of the cheeks, I usually use more of like a hot pink, but today I'm wearing like a more earth tones kind of look. So I'm gonna take a warm blush. This is from the Gwen Stefani blush palette, and it's the shade OC. The duochrome on this doesn't really show up, unfortunately, which makes it perfect for this look. And I'm just going to pop this right on the apples of the cheeks using like a combination of patting and sweeping. Notice that I don't smile when I do this, and you might think it's because I'm an unhappy person, but the reason I don't smile while doing my blush is because when you smile, you lift your cheeks, and then you're gonna apply blush here that ends up going down here when you're not smiling anymore. And then the last thing is highlight. I normally go for more of a cool tones highlight, like more of like an icy pink. But today, since I have a more warm look going on, I am going to use a combo of Becca Moonstone and Becca Champagne Pop. So I'm going to take a little bit of Champagne Pop. This is the Real Techniques setting brush, and I just wiped my setting powder off of there. And what I'm going to do, because this is darker than Moonstone, is I'm going to put it on the backs of my cheekbones, because remember how we were talking about whatever's darker should be towards where your face naturally recedes. And then I'm going to take Moonstone, which is a lot lighter, and I'm going to put that towards the front of my cheekbone. And if you're oily, you don't want to bring your highlight towards the apple of your cheek, because that's going to make you look more oily. Sorry guys, I know the background obviously just changed, but it is getting really dark, so I had to move closer to the window. I'm kind of starting to understand why everybody is going like bonkers over highlight. And I'm just going to take Moonstone again and just put a little bit on the bridge and tip of my nose and Cupid's bow. I don't put it above the brow or on the chin because that just like looks kind of sweaty, and I'm gonna do it. Oh, and I forgot one more thing. I'm gonna take the Pixie Glow Mist. Basically, this is like a straight up oil blend in like a mist format. I'm just gonna give myself Oh my god, I just breathed that in. I'm like getting a little bit unprofessional right now, but I like needed to get closer to the window. So yeah, that is everything, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you want to see next in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.